Hi, my name is Darren Bartlett, and I love discussing current affairs on the African continent. But being a Saturday, I talk about the stories that caught my attention on the continent. So there are so many that happened, but these are just a few that I think that you should follow. Now, to support my journalism, please subscribe, and you will never miss out on these stories. Now, I go to Angola, where we had a protest because of fuel and basically the economic situation in the country, and the Angolans went on the streets. Now, why am I talking about the story of Angola despite already telling it to you uh, earlier in the week? Why? I'm just saying that there are so many protests happening on the African continent, and this is when I bring in Liberia, a country that has gone through a lot of history in terms of wars. Here it is. So yesterday, the people of Liberia went on the streets and they are protesting for one thing. The difference between the protests in Liberia and Angola, one is an economic situation in Angola, but the other in Liberia is about the history. And the people are saying that many presidents have come and have been promising them a, a criminal war court. And I will quote for you a couple of them as you can see on the screens. The reasons people are saying we want the criminal court that we were promised to take in the people who are walking scot-free, the people who were responsible for displacing our fathers, our mothers, and ourselves, who were removed from our own homes during that war. It is statistically put there that about two-thirds of Liberians were internally displaced and others went out of the country. ECOWAS played a very key role to see that they take in some refugees, but also help stabilize the issue in Liberia. Now, the people of Liberia are tired of politicians who have come to promise them, number one, that criminal war court will be established so that people can find justice. Now, I will give you an example of something similar that happened like that, and indeed it brought peace to the country and some level of reconciliation. It is here in Rwanda. After the genocide had happened and the RPF of Kagame and others who came into power, they made sure that they established some tribunals to handle issues of genocide. And indeed, some people have been arrested from outside Africa or outside Rwanda, taken back to Rwanda to face justice. Others who ran to DRC have also been arrested and they faced those tribunals. Others were actually inside the country. So this is exactly what the Liberians want. They want the justice for the things that they suffered because of greed of a few people who felt they wanted power, but still, even when they came to power, continued to mistreat the people of Liberia. That story is a very interesting one that I think is one to follow and see whether the president of Liberia today will institute tribunals or the war courts, the criminal war courts that the people are demanding, so that they can get the justice that they really deserve as people. Staying in West Africa is Burkina Faso. That is another story that caught my attention. Because look, just after Mali's general Assimi came and said that he is dissolving all political parties, number one, and also has been installed as the leader of the country and on a renewable basis until they find it fit to return to civil rule. I just thought, okay, maybe Malians will never see a civil rule. Guess who comes into the door? Burkina Faso, who says they will disband, or they have actually disbanded, the electoral commission body, which is responsible to organize elections for leaders voted by people in the country. And they say it's because it's too expensive and yet the money needs to be done for other things. Now, here's the thing, hear me out clearly. Whereas sometimes I don't support the idea of democracy because it is costly, like number one, they say, but number two, Africa was not ready for democracy. And number three is that there may be very much so many more paining things for a country that it wants to solve rather than get the money and spend it on an election. Elections can cost even up to 10 million US dollars on an African continent, depending on the country's size of people and those ones who are willing to participate in an election and what method they are trying to use. But they say it will not be tolerated. Let's disband it. Let's continue with developing the country and instilling security. The civil rights activists there and members probably of the opposition may see this as a way of instilling and stamping the foot of military rule for a very long time, since it is not so clear when President Traore will actually hand over power and return to civil rule. Will he do what? Will he do what General Assimi has done, of instilling himself as the president and for a very long time? I don't know. Maybe it is an agenda of the Sahel states that are coming together, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Chad coming together and say, we are going to run this our own way. So that story is an interesting one, because President Traore has become very popular given his method of, first of all, kicking out the foreign soldiers, especially the French, and taking things back into their own hands, and also saying bye-bye to ECOWAS. And they feel like they can take the country ahead by their own, on their own terms, but also in the interest of the people of Burkina Faso. He's not the first guy who has done this. We saw it with Sankara, one of still the most popular presidents, or the youngest we ever saw on the African continent, who turned things around in the interest of people of Burkina Faso. And did I just say about kicking soldiers outside the country? Now, Senegal and France finally held a final ceremony where the French handed over their last military base to the Senegalese government and have left the country. So we've seen France leaving the West African, clearing up from Chad, from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and now Senegal has finally said bye-bye to the French soldiers. They have left the camp and the Senegalese will officially take over. However, a very important question that is being asked by so many people who observe the politics of Africa is that, is ECOWAS or are these countries able to stand and handle the jihadist insurgencies that are happening on the Western continent, the West African part of the continent? Is that something that they are possible to do? Not sure. But those stories have really caught my attention. Maybe just one more. And this, I don't know how really to present it, but what is happening in South Africa, which is Operation Dudula, where the South Africans are taking matters into their own hands to send out foreigners who are going there to kind of stay there for a living. But they believe that what the people they are trying to send out of that country are the people who are undocumented. Now I ask myself, is this the role of the people, or is it a role of the government? Is the government failing? Is the police failing in handling immigration issues in South Africa, that people then have to take matters in their own hands? The problem with people taking matters in their own hands is that there are certain levels of international or universal rights of people which are abused in the process. Number one is pregnant mothers being turned away from hospitals because they are undocumented or they do not have the nationalities ID for South Africa, and which sounds a little bit terrible, but as the more you read the news, the more you watch the channels there, you get to realize that this could be another form of xenophobia. And I hear when I said this, I hear South Africans saying it's not about xenophobia, but you are turning away someone who can literally die in your arms, and the accusation, or you will be vicariously liable for letting that person die, yet they could have accessed medical assistance. Maybe the protest should be against the government to push them to put together laws, but also terms to curb this influx of people who are entering into the country illegally and undocumented. My name is Darren Bartlett, and those are the stories that caught my attention. You can share with me yours, but also don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. Thank you.